The truth is, the Dallas Cowboys were outclassed by the Detroit Lions, and tonight we'll talk about it. Let's get to it. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. Where do you even begin after a 47-9 loss, which is what the Cowboys had to endure on Sunday versus the Lions at home for what was yet another tough loss, heartbreaking loss, humiliating loss, atrocious loss at home. And right now, questions are being asked, and rightfully so. Jerry Jones, right after the game, was asked about Mike McCarthy, potentially, not McCarthy specifically. I mean, he was asked, actually, now that I think about it, about McCarthy specifically. Are there any changes that are going to be made in coaching? Jerry Jones replied, no. That is not happening. So, one of those days to be a Cowboys fan where you're staring at a very, very tough scoreboard and thinking what is going to change, and the answer to that might be nothing. Now, let's talk about this game, man. And again, I ask this out loud. Where do you even begin? The Cowboys allowed over 490 yards of offense. And if you watch that game, this is basically what it looked like. Either Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery were gashing the Cowboys defense, running outside or inside, by the way, or Jared Goff was sitting in a comfortable, clean pocket and finding one of the multiple wide open receivers that were out there running out there on the back end of the defense, and they just cruised through the Cowboys. The first non-scoring stop, meaning the first drive from the Lions, where they didn't score a touchdown or a field goal, excluding the first half kneel down, happened with under 5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. And we talked on Thursday about how this was going to be one of those games where unless the Cowboys found a way to match what the Lions were doing offensively, they were going to lose it. Well, the Cowboys offense ended the day with no touchdowns and with 5 turnovers. Now, you look at the details of this game, and there's one clear theme that surges from it, and it is this. Your offense early in the game was handing the ball off to Ezekiel Elliott. It was sending CeeDee Lamb on a route behind the line of scrimmage on a gotta-have-it 3rd and 8. At one point in the first half, you went for it on 4th and 2. I gotta have it type 4th and 2. Or maybe it was in the second half, now that I think about it. If you guys remember specifically, man, just let me know. Sometimes these games get so blurry when you're taking notes and watching them, but maybe I should have wrote what the down was. I think it was in the second half. But anyways, 4th and 2, gotta have it. The play was to Kevontae Turpin, running a sick type route where he goes inside and then goes to the outside. That was the call the Cowboys had for 4th and 2. They went that route. They went with Kevontae Turpin on a contested throw. You might argue, well, Mo, that was clearly a DPI from the Lions. It should have moved the chains had the refs called pass interference. But that is the way that you handle a gotta-have-it 4th down. This is a game where you saw the Lions call a triple reverse flea flicker type play, and then you responded with more Ezekiel Elliott inside runs. It was just a masterclass from the Lions, while the Cowboys just gave you example after example of how they are simply better than you in everything, basically. And it's a frustrating game if you're a Cowboys fan because you're realizing the team is just not good enough. Every time after a loss, Cowboys fans usually want to blame either Dak Prescott or Mike McCarthy, but this was one of those games where you just realized, and let's give the defense a slight pass for what happened at defensive end because they don't have defensive ends, but your second-level defenders are not tackling. Not even Trevon Diggs, who is one of the top-paid cornerbacks in the NFL, is making those tackles. And when you are looking at the other side of the coin and you're looking at the offense, You've got a pass protection offensive line that cannot do its job. Run game is still broken, and it was in week 1, and it still is, by the way, because even after the Cowboys beat the Cleveland Browns, we were talking about how the running game was still broken, and you don't have any answers. And Mike McCarthy has been asked about why they're down so much in the first half, and he's talking about how, well, we got to be more physical. But that is also a coaching aspect to it. And, man, I know I'm rambling maybe and jumping back and forth, but there's just a long list to pick from when you're talking about what went wrong with the Cowboys. But here's something that stood out to me. And let me know if you agree or not in the chat. I'm looking forward to reading what you guys have to say. This stood out to me. You know the whole eligible drama from last year with the Lions about how Dan Skipper had reported it as eligible and all of that? I've always found it funny how the Lions have really hung on to that. You look at their social media, and even months after the fact, they were still making jokes about it. Obviously, in this game, there were going to be some jokes about it as well. But I love, objectively, like, we're taking that Cowboys hat off for now, and we're talking about this game objectively. You got to love how Dan Campbell used all of that to fuel the Lions for this one. You saw a Lions team that came out swinging and hungry for a win because you're the Lions. I mean, they're a pretty good football team. You got to give it to them. But you had Dan Campbell use that as a theme for this game. First play of the game, they had Dan Skipper report as eligible. They didn't run a trick play. They didn't do anything. They just did it because they were trying to send that message, right? Maybe a middle finger to the NFL and also to the Cowboys, I guess. And you might be thinking, well, I mean, yeah, Mo, but also in a much more real sense, after all, the Cowboys didn't screw up the officiating in that 2-point conversion from last year. That is true. That doesn't matter as long as Dan Campbell did his job and motivated the Lions using all of that narrative. And he did exactly that for this one. The Lions were bought into that. And you know what? I envy a coach like that. Because the Cowboys, on the other hand, they were not ready for this game at all. And they knew the Lions, we all knew about the Lions doing these offensive line shenanigans, and they were going to do it in this game. They did so multiple times, try to get a touchdown multiple times off of offensive linemen, and still you don't see anything like that on the other side. You don't see anything like that on the Cowboys side of things. And I thought that was an interesting thing from this game, and one of those things that you kind of wish was different for Dallas in terms of the coaching. Let me read some of your thoughts, though, on this game. Devon says, this offense was pathetic. We knew our defense was banged up, but this offense has no excuses. And I am in complete agreement with you, Devon. It's not even that you lost the game. It's the way that you went about it. We knew the game was over before the first quarter was over. At some points, it felt like that. By halftime, it was for sure over. Manuel says, Dak set the tone with the interception and the poor performance. Steele is a weak link on that side of the offensive line. No running back like Gibbs or Montgomery. That is speed, right? And listen, I kind of understand the whole thing about setting the tone with the interception to CD. That was a poor throw from Dak. There were some people talking about how it was a bad read. I don't think that was it at all. I think as Tom Brady explained during the broadcast, Dak thought he had CD, but he maybe needed a little bit more air so he could account for that safety that was taking the flat with Jalen Tolbert, Brian Branch. Gotta give it to Brian Branch. It was also a very, very nasty play from him in a good sense, obviously. But yeah, I can understand why someone would be like, yeah, Dak set the tone. And maybe they did. But at that point, the scoreboard was 7-3. You didn't lose to the Lions because of Dak Prescott. And I'm not even going to act like Dak had a very good game on this one. He didn't. But man, he was under consistent pressure. This guy was hit over 10 times in this game. He was sacked 4 times, and multiple times it was because the coverage was completely broken down. the pass protection was completely broken down. Then you looked at several miscues in the passing game beyond Dak Prescott, right? You saw Jake Ferguson drop a pass that he absolutely had to bring down. You saw CeeDee Lamb once again run a wrong route and not be in the same page as Dak Prescott is, which at week 6, it shouldn't be an issue anymore between the top wide receiver and the top quarterback. That maybe they share some blame on that. Absolutely they do. But it has to be fixed, whoever is to blame for some of those instances. At week 6, man, it is ridiculous. Training camp or no training camp, these two guys, they just need to be on the same page by now. And I think that should be obvious. And again, man, the whole thing about the Ezekiel Elliott handoffs early in the game, especially after a week where we talked about Ezekiel Elliott having discussions with the coaching staff about his role, is that why he was getting so many carries? Because at one point, when the game was 17-3, that was after 4 Cowboys possessions, Zeke had 5 carries and Rico Dowdle had 2. How is that acceptable after the only decent rushing performance that you had, which was last weekend versus the Steelers, thanks to Rico Dowdle? And suddenly you do a 180 and you're giving Zeke much more handoffs than Rico? Why? Because he had that discussion with the coaching staff? If so, man, that is a weak coaching staff, right? I think we all thought after last weekend that Rico Dowdle was the guy now, right? We even talked about how the whole running back by committee thing was over because Rico Dowdle was doing a good job running the ball. But for some reason, they were handing it off to Zeke consistently early in the game. Does that change things if those handoffs go to Rico? Does that change a 47-9 scoreboard? No, but it's another example of what I didn't like about the whole game plan and play calling from this game. I will say this, though. I think the whole Zeke thing was a result of that conversation during the week. It has to be. Otherwise, I don't see why that 180 makes sense all of a sudden. Man, Joshua says lack of poor defense plus all our main guys are injured. Get our guys back and we will be okay. I'm not entirely sure I'm on that boat, the same one as Joshua. Because I'm going to say this. Man, Parsons and Lawrence, they got hurt in the Giants game. That is the only game where you've been really good on defense. That is the only game. Even against the Steelers, sure, you had some big moments, but you look at the success rates, you look at that game, I think the Steelers messed it up a lot. But there were some moments where even the Steelers, one of the worst offenses in the NFL, was still moving the ball on you. So I'm not convinced about the whole thing about we're going to be fine once Micah and D-Law come back. I'm just not on that boat at all right now. But it's going to be better. That is absolutely true. I just think you lose this game with Micah and D-Law as well. I do think that. But we'll see, man. One thing about the offense, they did shake things up front with the whole Tyler Guyton thing. So Guyton was active for the game, yet he was on the bench. Tyler Smith took over at left tackle, and then TJ Voss took over at left guard. I have some mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, you can let me know what you think in the chat, as always. On the one hand, I look at that and I go, okay, it makes some sort of sense to be like, let's keep the best left tackle on the field, because I think today Tyler Smith is a better left tackle than Guyton. Maybe in the future that changes because you're hoping to develop Guyton, but today I think Smith gives you the better play at left tackle. Now, I think TJ Voss is obviously a massive downgrade at left guard from Tyler Smith. I understand the logic behind wanting to make this move. I, however, wonder, similar to the whole Rico Dowdle thing, you had your best rushing performance, and a lot of the successes in the running game have to do with your offensive line executing combo blocks. So if you run inside zone, you're doing a combo block. If you run duo, you're doing a combo block. That takes chemistry in the trenches. We're engaging the same guy at the same time, and then one of us has to disengage, climb to the second level, and block a linebacker, block a defensive back. We saw a lot of good examples of that versus the Steelers last weekend. You shake things up, you put TJ Voss inside, you kick Tyler Smith to the outside. Evidently, some of that chemistry is going to be lost. So I'm not sure even about dealing with that offensive line shakeup in this week being the right call. I think maybe Guyton should have been out there at left tackle again with Tyler Smith at left guard. Maybe Guyton would have gotten destroyed by Aiden Hutchinson, but I kind of think that the pass protection scheme was different as a result of the Cowboys playing Tyler Smith at left tackle, and we didn't see a good pass protection unit versus the Lions. Dismantled, as Justin says, man. Dismantled. And the pressers are the pressers, man, and players got to answer some of these questions in the interviews, but it's a lot of the same, right? It's Dak Prescott saying he has to be better. It's players talking about how they got to practice better. And it's like this constant message of, yeah, we'll be better, we'll be better, we'll be better. But right now I'm wondering what is going to change for the Cowboys before they take the field again versus the San Francisco 49ers. Because according to Jerry Jones, it's not going to be coaching. And I don't see how it will be players-wise other than hopefully getting Micah Parsons back and Daron Bland back. Of course, that would be huge. But on offense, what exactly are you getting next time that you're on the field? Because let me tell you this, man. The Lions came into this game as a 21st pass defense per EPA per play. You couldn't score a touchdown on them. Red zone offense, it's dead in Dallas as of now. Can they fix it? Maybe. But, man, it's got to be a massive shift. It's got to be an even bigger shift than the one that we saw last year during the bye week when the Cowboys came out with a completely different scheme. Something has to happen, and I'm not sure what will, unless it's either players magically getting better over 2 weeks or Micah McCarthy really taking the playbook, burning it, and just hitting the post-bye portion of the season with a completely different approach. An even more drastic change to the one that we saw in 2023 after the Niners and the Chargers games. We'll see if that happens, though. Man, I just have this thought here, though. A lot of people want Mike McCarthy to be fired mid-season. I think even that is questionable because of the point of the year in which we are. If you fire Mike McCarthy now, then what is the plan? And I'm not saying they shouldn't do a coaching change. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm just saying maybe it wouldn't make a whole lot of difference. But I will say this. Asking Jerry Jones to fire a head coach in week 6, to me, is funny when we consider the guy won't even close the curtains of his own stadium, even though it's been an issue repeatedly throughout the years. And I'm not saying that if those curtains are closed, the Cowboys win the game, because obviously that wouldn't have happened. But I do think it's a good example of how stubborn the front office can really be sometimes. I have a lot of comments in the chat that I want to get to. Morris says Dak has to throw to the open receiver and not force it to Lamp. Lamp will pout, but he'll get over it. And I'll say this, man. I'm not sure we saw a lot of forced throws today, but I do agree with Morris in theory. And I just think that I think in that particular interception, which might be the play that Morris is referring to, I think it was just an overconfident throw from Dak. And sometimes that leads to a lot of highlight plays for the Cowboys QB. But in this instance, he just didn't have that ball. Like, he needed a perfect throw to hit Dak Prescott in the end zone, and he didn't have that at all in that particular play. Bruce says, Mo, games like this I saw coming because of the offseason, and that is why I have been much less invested. Bruce, I don't blame you. I really don't. And that is also the frustrating part of it. I think we're kind of realizing that this is like a boxer, right? This is like a fighter in boxing where they're climbing up the rankings, they're fighting better opponents. You know, they start against the losing record guys, and then they climb against some better competition, maybe get a co-main event type thing, and then they start fighting contenders to try to approach that belt title, that belt fight, and that's when they start losing, right? Maybe that's when the knockouts stop happening. Maybe that's when they start falling off. And it's not that they're a bad boxer. It's just that once they are facing those top-tier contenders, that's when I think the Cowboys, they simply don't have that caliber right now. They don't. The team is not constructed to be a contender, honestly. The offensive line has plenty of question marks, and you could have kept Tyron Smith. You could have found a way to do that. So that was a conscious decision from the Cowboys. You could have found a better wide receiver out there. You opted to, hey, we're going to bet on Brandon Cooks. We're going to bet on Jalen Tolbert. You know what? I'm not even going to hate on that. But you took that offensive line decision very consciously. On defense, you decided to not pay Stephon Gilmore, which you also could have done. And if you disagree with me, let me remind you, Gilmore accounts for $4 million in the Vikings cap space. The Cowboys could have done that easily. The Cowboys decided not to do it. So now they got a practice squad corner going up against Jameson Williams, against Amon-Ra St. Brown. And sure, injuries have something to do with that, but also you could have had Stephon Gilmore out there. Trey Lance occupies more cap space on your team than Gilmore does on his. And you traded for Trey Lance, only in a poor attempt to gain leverage in negotiations with Dak, which, by the way, they lost. They lost those negotiations. That is the reason why Trey Lance is in Dallas, if we're being real. Defense has always been Purse's, Derek, and I agree with that. Jermaine says $60 million quarterback, and we're going into the bye week without a home win. Wow, says Jermaine. Now, yep, that is true. But I'm not sure if Jermaine is saying it from a point of view that is attacking Dak Prescott. And I wouldn't blame him, right? It's a tough loss. You always look at the QB first. But man, you're watching the Lions in the same game, and you're watching Jared Goff sit in a comfortable pocket, drinking a cup of tea before making the throw. You're watching the Lions come up with all of these cool designs that make life easy on him. You're looking at him hit open receiver after open receiver after open receiver. You saw the trickery. You saw all of that. You tell me if Dak Prescott and Jared Goff are playing the same game, because it doesn't feel like it. It just doesn't. So we can talk about how much the QB is paid. We can talk about all that, and we can blame it all on the QB if we want. But man, these two guys, they were not playing the same game. And I think it really goes to show you how your offense is run versus how some of these top offensive guys are running it. Because, man, Dak is not getting a lot of help in these games. And I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying he doesn't take a part in these losses. He absolutely does. But I can guarantee you those $60 million you're paying him are far from your top problem. And I would hope that watching the Lions in the same game shows that. I hope that makes it clear. I really think it should. Bruce says, Mo, I had a Lions fan at work says he was shocked Dallas didn't sign Derrick Henry. Oh, man, that's hilarious, actually. Man, Bruce, he's going to give you a hard time on Monday, I think. I would call in sick. Morris says Tolbert was open underneath in that interception. Tolbert may have potentially scored. Man, I have to go back and watch that. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe you. Letting Gilmore walk was ridiculous. Saved our season when Diggs went down last year. Morris is agreeing on all your points. Jerry let key re-signing slip through his fingers. Really did. And, man, I understand not wanting to pay Fowler and Armstrong at defensive end, but boy, would you miss one of those two, or Jonathan Hankins, as we've discussed before. Man, I just don't know what the Cowboys did right on this game other than Brandon Aubrey being Brandon Aubrey, if I'm being real with you. Red zone offense has to improve. That's what CeeDee Lamb said after the game as well. They got to score touchdowns. You cannot keep having these issues, man. The Cowboys went, let me give you the official number after the game. Man, it locked me out from the stats site I use. There we go. The final number for the Cowboys in the red zone was 0 for 3. Man, I'm surprised that they only got there 3 times in the first place. Man, 3.9 yards per attempt, 3 for 13 on third down. Just rough. Several keys on the whole management thing of the game. I talked about, for example, the 3rd and 8 play, the call that I didn't like, where you had a 3rd and 8 where you had CeeDee Lamb running an orbit motion in the backfield and then running a route that didn't get to the line of scrimmage. That was your call on 3rd and 8. 4th and 2, I've talked about this. You went to Kevontae Turpin on a contested throw. There were different instances that also upset me in this game where you had 3rd and 19 before the end of the first half. You're down 27-3 at that point in the game, and the Lions received the kickoff. These are the Lions that you had not stopped in the entirety of the first half. You had given up a touchdown, field goal, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, in that order. 27-3. And the Cowboys played for the field goal after the Kevontae Turpin special, where John Fassel called like this trickery where it seemed like he was going to throw the reverse, the end around, and then he kept it, put the Cowboys in a favorable spot. Cowboys played for a field goal. 3rd and 19, you saw the Cowboys throw the football underneath to CeeDee. Now, I understand it is 3rd and 19. I understand it is not easy to move the chains in that particular instance. However, 27-3 and the Lions receive in the second half, the game is lost, my friend. The game is lost. Why not go for it in a much more aggressive way and try to change things? They had the timeouts. They could have done it that way. I think that was very conservative. I think that was the Cowboys maybe being in denial that they were buried by that stage in the game. Because you were not stopping the Lions in the second half. You had to make something happen. And the Cowboys were like, nah, we're good going from 27-3 to 27-6. That'll show them. That'll show him, right? This is the momentum we need to come back strong in the second half. I don't understand that logic at all. Other instances that I have written down here in my little notes. 3rd and 9 the Lions faced at one point in this game, and they ran the football. That's been a common theme since the week 2 loss to the New Orleans Saints. You have seen teams run on you on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 9. I think was the craziest one, which was what happened today versus the Lions. These teams do not respect your defense to the point where if it's 3rd and long, they'll still run on you because they know they're getting yards, and they know if they go for it on 4th down and it's a 4th down and short, chances are they'll move the chains as well. Now, sure, we can talk about Micah being out, D-Law being out. This has been happening since week 2. You had the Saints run on you on 3rd and 4. You had the Ravens run on you on 3rd and 6 because they trust they're going to move the chains against you running the freaking football, man. It is wild. It is wild. And David says to get within 3 TDs, talking about that decision. Here's the thing, though, and the decision of going for 3 at the end of the first half. You're not even, yes, you're technically within 3 TDs, but you need 3 touchdowns without response and a 2-point conversion. I honestly don't like the whole thing about going for the field goal, playing for the field goal. If you're already on 4th down, okay, I get it. But on 3rd and 19, the call is to go to the flat, to go underneath. I would have liked to see more aggressiveness, at least me personally. I understand that was a little bit of a controversial call, but that's just where I'm standing, man. Like, you're not stopping the offense. They receive in the second half. I really don't think it makes a whole lot of difference at that point in the game. Jeffries' offensive play calling was predictive, ran on first time too many times, and a lot of those early in the game with sick, which is one of the things that still blows me away. John says Jerry was 53 when they won their last trophy. Man, wasting all of our strong players with McCarthy, says Katharina. Rob says they need to stop running sick unless 2 or fewer yards. Rob, they need to stop having sick active for game day, in my view. I agree with you. I think sick should be a healthy scratch, man. I think he should be a healthy scratch moving forward, honestly. I do. I don't see what he brings to the table right now. Man, just an absolutely blowout against the Detroit Lions. And now you go to the bye week. Then you get the Niners. 2 weeks. We won't know what will happen in 2 weeks. But hopefully, the silver lining that you might cling on to, it might be the fact that, hey, maybe the Cowboys do the same thing that they did last year. Maybe they figure out a way to make this adjustment and that adjustment and get cooking on offense. That's what happened last year. And it happened around this time of the year as well. They're 3-3. CeeDee Lamb told reporters the season does not end in 6 weeks. That much is true. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not betting on them figuring this one out. I'm not betting on that happening. Could it happen? Yes, it could. It did last year. So, my question is, do you have the offensive line to really be able to reach those adjustments that you need to reach? But this team needs to be more physical. This team needs to be more disciplined. This team needs to get on the same freaking page. Listen, I said this earlier on the show. Going around just blaming Dak Prescott for all of this, to me, is silly. But that second-team All-Pro quarterback and that first-team All-Pro wide receiver need to get on the same page. They need to get on the same page, man. Because this team needs it. This team does not have the caliber. The quarterback and the wide receiver will need to elevate them. And I understand that is unfair maybe to some degree. But, man, you go into week 8 and you're still seeing Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb get miscommunications. Man, that is unacceptable. It already is, even more so when they come back to the field in week 8. And I agree with Roy here. He says you don't just get physicality in week 6. You either have it or you don't have it. And that goes to roster construction. And that goes to mindset. What the Lions do, man, it's all Dan Campbell. And it's the players that Dan Campbell has built his players with. These dudes have that mentality. I have not seen the Cowboys have that mentality against a good team in a long, long time. This is the same conversation that we've had for years. Versus the Niners, it's the same. You're getting punched in the mouth. Versus the Ravens, it's the same. You're getting punched in the mouth. The Packers, punched in the mouth. At what point does that change in Dallas? Because there's many ways you can beat teams in the NFL, right? You can just punch guys in the mouth. You can finesse them. You can do a lot of things. The Cowboys have been a finesse team for a good while now, but sometimes it feels like that's just not good enough. Eddie says, can we go get Davante Adams or maybe get Amari Cooper back? Can be in the word? Sure, you can do that. You can make it happen. Will the Cowboys make it happen? I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it. I think there's going to be a bidding war for Davante Adams. I don't think they're going to get in on that. I would be surprised if they do. I would be surprised if they outbid the Bills and the Jets and the Ravens. Teams that are much more proactive. Amari Cooper would be a surprise to me just because I know the Cowboys let their money get mad the last time they were involved with Amari Cooper, and it would take them overcoming that, and I'm not sure they're going to do that. And if you're asking me about T. Higgins, as Manuel is over here, Manuel, there's nothing I would love more. I would love T. Higgins on this team. But yeah, man, I'm not betting on that. Jeffrey says number 6 played well tonight, and maybe when we catch the replay, I'll agree with you, Jeffrey. There's one play though that I cannot get out of my mind, and that's David Montgomery just dragging Donovan Wilson for those last 5 yards before he scored the first touchdown of the game. But you might be onto something there, Jeffrey. I'm gonna fixate on that when I get the all 22 tomorrow for sure. And Keo says, you see every other team moving the rock, even rookie QBs. What is Dak's problem? And if we're being fair, that is part of the discussion, right? Are we really going to pretend Dak is the worst QB in the NFL or something like that? Man, it's about everything else that is surrounding that. It is wild. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button for me. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Go out for a walk, maybe watch baseball, maybe play a board game. Play a board game with my family tonight. Have some fun for this Sunday night, and I'll catch you tomorrow with a quick hitting video as we do Monday through Wednesday. And I'll be back throughout the week. Ladies and gentlemen, check all of the content out. There might be a pause to the live shows for the next couple of weeks as I'm going to be on the road for a good chunk, but there are still going to be a lot of primetime shows for y'all on this beautiful channel. As always, hit the like button for me. Thanks so much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.